Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thriving Children's Summit. Today we have Afshan Tafler. She is a mind, body, and health life coach. So she's really going to be talking to us about taking care of ourselves and how taking care of ourselves really helps our children. So hello, Afshan. Thank you for being here. Go ahead and start us off. Tell us
Hi.
about your journey and how you got to where you are.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, Kolby. I'm really excited to be here, and it's a pleasure to share my experience and my thoughts to help others, part of my purpose. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so how did I get here? This was a second career for me that kind of was unexpected and really happened through the birth of my child and all of the challenges I went through with him. So it was quite a struggle early on. He had medical issues. He barely slept. He barely ate. He vomited 6 times a day. I did everything possible to keep him out of a hospital and away from invasive procedures. And through that journey, I really hit rock bottom and then was diagnosed chronic fatigue syndrome, then fibromyalgia later on. And I was, a mess on the inside. On the outside, I, seemingly was totally fine because that was sort of the conditioning I was brought up with, that I, don't show sort of your weaknesses to everybody else. And so that was really a part of also why I got ill. There was so much emotional stress underneath. And a lot of that emotional stress had to do with how I was dealing with having a child with all these needs. I was not in acceptance of it. I wanted to do anything possible to make him better. And of course, as a parent, you want to help your child as much as possible. But there was a drive behind it that wasn't healthy, in hindsight. It was a drive for not wanting to have a child that was quote unquote not normal and not and had all these issues. I wanted a perfect child and I felt robbed of that. And so I went on this journey to do anything possible with a hypervigilant energy behind it. And then that's what made me hit rock bottom. And then I went on a journey of, healing both of us. And I first, learned a lot about nutrition and about health and about how our genes get turned on and off with, the right nutrition and supplements. And so I got my son out of the red medically. He had an immune system worse than a NAIDS patient too. Got him out of the red medically, and he did really well. And then myself, I did better definitely on that approach, and I was doing all the right things, but I still wasn't healing. So it wasn't until I started working with all the emotional stress factors and how, this deep unhappiness of having this child with all these challenges. And it wasn't until I really worked with all of that that I started to really heal. As that then took me back, whatever my experience with that was happening with my child had a lot to do with the beliefs I had taken on from when I was younger. So it was all connected and just living out now more obviously, after I had a child. It was triggering back all of that. So I went on this whole journey of really understanding, what does it mean to be truly healthy, and learning that, our biography becomes our biology, how we live our life, and really ends up living in our bodies. And when things are out of balance in our life, that shows up in our bodies. And then so I decided to formalize it and really make it a career. So as I got better and as my son got better, I said, okay, this is my calling. This is what I'm going to focus on going forward. So that's how I kind of came to my path of being a whole life coach, really helping people to heal from a mind, body, and soul perspective, because all parts of us are connected and all parts are connected to our health. So I also do conscious parenting as well now, because through my journey, a lot of parents have really struggled with their children. And when we focus on that and work on that, their exhaustion, goes away, their energy comes back. So I've kind of brought that in because that's part of, the whole life experience of kids are a huge factor, right? And stress that you can be experiencing as a parent. Everything changes after you have a child. So that's kind of how I came onto my path of what I'm doing today.
That was a great story. Tell
Thank
me
you.
a bit about what those emotional stressors are and how they wreak havoc on our body, and what do they do? Because having children, like you said, is extremely stressful with all the worry and trying to balance everything and the guilt that you feel. You know, it seems to be unending.
Yes, yes. Can definitely feel that way. So, a lot of our emotional stressors as parents are, as you said, the worries we have about our child, then the frustrations and anger we have about their behaviors, getting in the way of us being able to get things done and having a more peaceful, way of doing things. And so it literally, like, your emotional stress kicks up 10 notches after having a child, because your whole life has changed, and you've gone from balancing a few things to now balancing a lot more, then having all this fear and worry that we have about our children. But when we really look underneath all of that, our children are triggering in us. We come into a time in our life when we have children where they're triggering us in emotional stressors that really stemmed from way, way before we had our kids. And so they're really like mirrors to help us understand what may be really stressing us out. But what happens when we have, a lot of emotional stress and we're not really understanding consciously what all of it is, it can end up having a chronic stress response in the body. And so, our mind and body are indeed connected. We know from the newer science of psychoneuroimmunology and a lot of Dr. Candace Pert's work and Dr. Bruce Lipton's work that a lot of the way we think and what we're believing about our life and the stress around us creates a stress response in our bodies. So we know that, like, when we're panicky or, we feel that in our bodies, right? Or when we're in fear, we can be shaking, we can feel that. But when it becomes chronic, we're not always aware of it. But what happens is that whatever we're stressed about ends up going into our bodies down to the cellular and genetic level. So first it starts by depressing our immune response. And we know that when we're really stressed, our immune system can go down. Like, we've seen that when we're really stressed, really busy, then all of a sudden we get sick more, right? Or we start to get sick more. So that's our immune system not functioning as well. But then it also affects us down to the cellular level, like the functioning of the cells, the ion channel opening and closing, our ability to absorb nutrients, all of that gets affected by this chronic emotional stress. And so, and then down to genetic levels as well, we know from the science of epigenetics that our genes are very much affected by our environmental factors. And the environmental factors includes the emotional stress that's in the environment of the cell. That affects the cell's functioning as well. It affects the expression of genes, from good genes being turned on, bad genes being turned on, good genes being turned off, kind of thing. And then that starts a disease process in our body. So everything is connected. So as parents, if we're running around in this chronic state of emotional stress, we're, first of all, it's affecting our bodies 100%. Just, what is your tipping point kind of thing, where then it launches into something, more, or you may just have like chronic exhaustion. It could show up as stomach disturbances. It could show up as migraines, headaches, that you get a lot. Stress manifests in different body symptoms, in a chronic way over time if you're not really working on the emotional stress. So for parents, I recommend two reasons. One big reason to work on the chronic emotional stress is because it's going to help you have a better functioning body and be there, for longer for your children. And secondly, it's going to model, to your children that mommy and daddy are stressed, but they have tools and they work on it, and they work on decreasing their stress. So that is an amazing teaching for your child to learn, like, okay, how do we work with stress? How do we deal with stress in life? So tuning into the emotional stress is really the first step, and then really working on it, not ignoring it and waiting to the point where you are completely wiped out and exhausted or have, chronic symptoms in your body.
So my question on that is emotional stressors. So to tune into them. So, okay, so we know we're feeling stressed. So I'm going to kind of walk myself through this and you tell me where I'm going here. I notice that I'm stressed, but for me, like sometimes I don't know why. I'm just like, oh my God, why do I feel so overwhelmed and like I can't get anything done properly. Like I'm halfway getting this done. I can't fully immerse myself to get something done properly, or maybe it's the kind of perfectionism or something to where I think it's supposed to end up a different way. And so that's kind of my question to you is how do I first notice and then say, okay, there I am in my emotional craziness. And what would be the next step after that? Like how do I work on that?
Yes. Okay. So the perfect segue into beliefs here. Okay. So the first step is you notice that you're becoming emotionally aroused and you're stressed and you're feeling overwhelmed. So the first thing to ask yourself is, what am I believing about the situation? What am I believing that I have to do? What am I believing about the situation? So if you get an answer that I'm believing that I have to be somebody who finishes her to-do list. Okay. Simple as that. And if I don't, I'm not happy with myself and I am a failure. Okay. So it's like sitting quietly and knowing that that's really like, that's the deeper, right, part of it. So you have a belief that if I don't get my to-do list done, then I can't feel good about myself. And and then underneath that might be, I am a failure. Then the second question to ask is really, where did I learn that belief from? And it likely came from, your childhood or somewhere earlier on in your life where you were given a lot of love, acceptance, praise, attention for getting stuff done, for doing things right, for doing things correctly, for being perfect. And if you were not, then you learned that I don't get love and acceptance from my parents. I don't get love and acceptance from my teachers unless I'm doing things right. I get everything done and I'm doing things more on the perfect side of things. So then, of course, everything in life that happens that kind of goes, against that belief system, like is gonna frustrate you and make you upset and make you overwhelmed. So then it's about questioning, does this belief system really work for me? Like, do I need to only feel good if I get everything done? If I don't get everything done, is that okay? Am I still a good person? Am I still, valuable in life? Am I still, okay? And it's like the world's gonna fall apart, no. So it's about shifting our belief systems to one that are more healthier for us, so that we don't get triggered into that chronic stress response because we're living from a belief system that we picked up years ago that we probably didn't even have a choice over picking up. It was just kind of passed down to us, And then this also happens with our children. So same thing goes for if your child is not getting stuff done or not being efficient or not, or being like lying around and being lazy, you look at your child as like, what are you getting? Like, you're not getting anything done. Like, what's going on? Like, I don't want to have a lazy child. Well, why don't you want to have a child who lies around and rests? Because you felt threatened as a kid. Because if you did that, you didn't get a good response from it. So of course, your children are going to then mirror to you every single belief system you live through. And that's the lens through which you see your child. So if you see your child through that lens, then how do you see them? They're bad, they're disruptive, they're not being good children, that they're never going to be successful in the world. Oh my God, then you go into fear and then it spirals.
Yeah.
You're right, it spirals. So really shining light on the belief systems that we're operating through as parents is so important, because we often picked up these belief systems when we were really young. From the ages of 0 to 6, 8 years old, our brains are in theta and delta waves. And that's a very hypnosis type state, you know, so people who do hypnosis try to get you into those waves so that you become more suggestible. So as kids, we're very suggestible. We learn from the way that things get programmed, you know, these belief systems get programmed in our subconscious minds is through what we learn from our parents and caregivers or teachers, cultural conditioning, societal conditioning, and then highly charged emotional experiences where we felt threatened that we were going to lose the love and acceptance of our parents because we were not acting according to their belief systems, you know. So our parents said, you know, had a belief system, which most of our parents had, and it's been passed on generation for generation, that a child who doesn't listen is a bad child. Okay, so if you have this belief system, every time your child doesn't listen to you when you want them to do something, you know, you're going to be upset and it's going to bother you. But what if that belief system was instead a child who doesn't listen is just being a child and is either distracted and needs some help to get focused so that we can go on and do what we need to do, or a child who's not listening to me, instead of saying, oh, they're defiant, you know, and they have their own opinion. Okay, they're their own unique, authentic person. They have their own opinion, sure, and I can honor that. And we can work together to come to a solution that works, that meets both of our needs. Mm-hmm. But if we don't operate through these more like expansive, like life-giving, energy-giving beliefs, and these more like, you know, putting children into a box that they have to be like this way because that's what we believed we had to be in order to be loved, accepted, safe, and connected. So those are the big things. Everything in life we do is so that we feel loved, accepted, safe, and connected. And not, as an adult, we're not doing it on a conscious level anymore, where it's all subconscious, you know, until we make it conscious and bring it into our awareness.
Hard. That's hard stuff.
It's deep stuff. Yes. It's deep and it's hard at first.
It is.
It's hard at first because it's challenging. Something like it will create a serious dissonance in your body, like a visceral reaction of you know, because it's going against what you learned of how to be accepted in this world. And so you think that your child needs to learn those things in order to feel safe. And if they're, you know, to be safe, accepted, right? None of us want our children to be the outlander, or, you know, the child who's kind of left out or shunned or whatever. Like, we don't want our children to go through these experiences. But the reality is that that's how they learn in life too, you know, about what's right, what's wrong for them. But, and also, you know, we need to really tie it to when we worry about our children and we don't want them to get hurt, it's really because we got hurt so badly and we would never want them to experience what we've experienced. But the irony is that we're then hurting our children by not allowing them to fully be their authentic self, by asking them to live under our belief systems that are, you know, no longer even serving us in some ways, you know?
Yes, I completely agree and hear you. What I'm kind of hearing you say is that due to the fact that these kids they have their own agenda, and their agenda is just as important as ours. And
yes, and their agenda is their authenticity. That's how I would put it. It's not an agenda like, I'm going to defy you and I want to do what I want and screw you, you know? It's, right. Yes, they can be like that, but that's because they're trying to defend their authenticity. They want to have their expression accepted. So imagine if you went through life and you had blow-ups or you had joyful expressions, and every single expression of your authentic self in that moment, the experience you're having in that moment, was accepted by the people around you. Well, the science of like mirror neurons, right, tells us that when people mirror back to you and accept to you what you're showing them, that, you know, helps you to learn about yourself. So when as parents, if we're constantly mirroring lack of acceptance to our children, then their mirror neurons are learning lack of acceptance of themselves. And then they grow up feeling unhappy unless they fit into the criteria of what their parents want them to be. And it creates a serious disconnect from self, which causes a lot of suffering inside, which then can lead to anxiety, depression, and a host of other issues later in life, for children. And we're seeing that the statistics in that, the exponential rise in anxiety, the exponential rise in kids committing suicide. And there's multiple factors around that. But one of the big factors is that kids can, that where this conditioning that's been passed on generation after generation that we've now taken and then passed on to our kids are these belief systems that don't allow our kids to fully express who they authentically are and be accepted for that. It doesn't mean we have to do everything our kids say, or want. It just means we got to accept them. And then we work on a solution that works for everybody, Right. So that's kind of like it's a shift in mindset around the way we see our children.
And then I'm going to kind of go back up because I like where this is going with one question. So in the moment, let's talk about when I was talking about the whole stressor thing and you figure out, okay, what's my belief system? Do you feel that the way to kind of work on that, because for me, I'm thinking about myself. So I hope everyone out there understands that I'm just trying to kind of give some insight here.
And whatever is for yourself likely will relate to a lot of people. So go ahead.
So it would be very hard for me to do that in the moment. So I'm wondering if I journal in the evening or in the morning and say, okay, where did I feel the stress today and where did that come from? And those like a little task or something, because in the moment when I'm cooking dinner and I'm mom, and I'm just like, and it would be very hard for me to say, okay, my belief system is XYZ, Would you say that maybe journaling, it's more of a question.
Yeah. Okay. So for sure, quiet time, right? Taking time to yourself and reflecting on how you responded or reacted to your day, and how, and understanding why you reacted. It's usually reacted. Usually when we respond, we're happy with that because it comes from a more grounded place. But when we react, we're not happy with that. So really looking at your reaction, and yes, journaling. So the questions of, what was I believing today about my child that he was like, mom, mom, mom in my ear? I believed that he was bothering me. Okay. But then take a step back. Okay, yes, I was busy. I was doing all the stuff I needed to get stuff done. Okay, so what belief am I operating under myself? Well, I need time and space to get stuff done, because if I don't get this stuff done, then, then everything else doesn't fall into place and whatever, right? Okay, so you have a need, right? You have a need and you believe that you need to fulfill that need in that moment, and your child is like barking in your ear and he's not allowing you to fulfill your need to get something done. But from your child's perspective, what is his perspective of it when he's barking mom, mom, mom? Yeah. He has a need too, right?
And his agenda is mine.
And he has an agenda, right? So what the key is, what do you want? How do you want to see your child? How do you want to see the situation? How do you want to respond in the situation instead? And so then understanding, well, I want my need to get met. I want to be able to attune to my child at the same time, but I also want to be able to draw a boundary, right, on what needs to happen. And so then it's coming to a solution in your mind of, okay, the next time this happens, I can handle it this way. So that's more of like a very tactical way of doing things, but also understanding the belief system that I believe he's a child bothering me versus he's just a child trying to get his need met.
Right.
So I'm trying to get my need met. He's trying to get my need met. Okay. We're both trying to get our needs met. So how can I solve this solution? Well, maybe I can say to him, okay, mommy has a need to do this, and if I don't get this done, then we don't eat dinner on time, and then we don't get to activities or whatever else is happening, right? Or you don't eat, then you go to bed on time, and then you're cranky the next day. And so mommy has a need to do this. What's your need? Mommy, I want to do this. Okay. Can I do that for you after dinner? Can we co-create this, take a couple of minutes to just stop, breathe in the moment, come down to their level, understand what their need is, and understand what your need is, and then create a solution that works for both of you. And it doesn't have to take long. Like the moment we attune to our children and their needs, then at that point, and we attune to our need in the moment too, right? Both attunement happening, okay, it creates a whole different energy field of like, then things can move on more smoothly versus resistance to your son having a need. You then, strongly stringent to needing to meet your need right now, right? Which is another belief system that we operate under, this whole concept of time and getting things done in the certain timelines, right? Then, it's really like from there, if you can attune to your own needs in the moment, his needs in the moment, then you're able to come together and co-create something that works for both of you. So that's how, that helps in the moment. And then later on, you can go and see, well, how come I can't shift this way of seeing my child as somebody who's such a pain in the butt, who bothers me all the time when I have to get stuff done? So that's where you go through and say, well, where did I learn that? What were the sort of the things in my life that happened maybe with my parents or teachers where I felt like I was a pain in the butt and my parents made me feel that way? Because then that's the belief system I'm operating under. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And by doing these activities and by kind of reflecting, like you're saying, we will slowly get better at understanding our stressors in the moment. Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Our stressors and our needs, it's about needs and beliefs. So those are the two overarching things, I think.
Okay.
What is my need in the moment? Where that you can, in the moment, you can ask yourself, what is my need right now? My need is to get this done. What is his need right now, right? Your child's need. So to see both your perspectives. And then to later, you can do this in the moment too. What am I believing about my child right now? Oh, I don't want to believe that about him. I don't want to believe that he's being a pain in the butt. He's just being a child. He's just trying to get his need met, and the world is about him as children. It often is, right? In the ego states that they're in when they're very young.
Right.
And there's a developmental reason for that. So there's a purpose for why they are that way, and it's not that they're trying to be bad. So this whole notion of parents, like we often feel like our children are, every time they do something that goes against what we approve of, we feel like they are being bad. And that is conditioned beliefs that have been passed on, dumped on us. We dump it on our children, and we keep, and then it keeps getting passed forward. And so your opportunity as a parent is to really start to come more into awareness of, in the moment, how am I reacting to the situation? And what need do I have? What need does my child have? To see both perspectives. And then what am I really believing about my child right now that's making me have this negative reaction towards them? And how does that belief then how it really is about me?
Yeah.
How much do you feel like you can't bother people? Like, no, you don't want to be a pain to people, so then you make sure you're really polite and kind, and even at the expense of your own needs, then you go through life like that because you think, well, that's the way we should be as people, right? But if it comes from an authentic way of being, sure, great. But if it comes from a conditioned, belief system that was passed on to us, then oftentimes we forgo our own needs in the moment, in daily life. Like we give up our needs for the sake of others, and then we feel drained. Our energy is drained from that. So it's really like everything our kids mirror to us has everything to do with us and how we were raised, our belief systems that we lived through, and how we believe we need to be in the world in order to be safe, loved, accepted, and connected.
Yeah. Whoosh. It's a very big concept. You know what I mean? I completely agree with you. It's just, I've lost my train of thought. Just the way in which, just to think, how would I want to see my kid right now? I think that's a really great question to ask yourself in the moment when you're in, cooking dinner for the
right.
the argument we were talking about. So I know what I was going to ask you. So as parents, in your opinion, what should we be doing for ourselves so our own mind, body, health, safety, all those four things that you hit there? Like, are there activities, or not like specific activities? I'm talking about, obviously everyone has an activity that they prefer over something else. And my question to you is I think we as parents, number one, feel a lot of guilt taking time for ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that it is something that we are, again, a belief system that we shouldn't be taking time for ourselves because we had kids and they should be the number one priority.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, kind of like you were just hitting on it. For some reason, I'm just not getting right back to it. But those belief systems that I'll have to come back to it. I'm sorry.
Well, let me just comment on what you just said there. This whole notion of we feel guilty and we have to put our kids first, and then deny ourselves the needs. A lot of that, that alone, that behavior alone, that way of thinking alone creates a lot of chronic stress inside. Because we come into this world to live life for ourselves, first and foremost, and to be our authentic selves. As your child comes into this world, to be their authentic selves and fulfill their own needs. So it's very important to fulfill your own needs. Of course, we're also here to be in connection with others and help others as well. So the challenge is when we have that thinking that, our child always, we have to put our children first ahead of ourselves. It really comes from a belief that my needs don't matter. So I've got to take care of everybody else's needs first. And that likely was also a belief passed on to us. But the reality, and the truth of having a child who is resilient and healthy and goes through life feeling good about themselves is that when a parent takes care of themselves emotionally and can stay more regulated for the child, that helps them on multiple levels in so many ways versus just being the parent who does so much for their kids, that goes overboard doing all these things, like doing, but not necessarily being there for their kids. So the challenge is we cannot fully be there for our kids, fully attune to them, unless we can attune to ourselves first. So that's where, the emotional care, self-care is so important, to attuning to your own inner environment, your own inner psyche, your own emotions of how you're feeling about things, being there for yourself first with compassion and fully loving and accepting yourself for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because that's the way you can love and accept your children for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because as humans, we are meant to have the good, the bad, and the ugly. We can't have all perfection. But the challenge is that we grew up, culturally conditioned through our parents, through the generations, that we only really get accepted for the perfect parts of us. Nobody likes the ugly parts of us. They don't accept the ugly parts of us. So then what do we learn? We don't like the ugly parts of us. In fact, I hate the parts of me that are not good enough. And I shame those parts of me that are not good enough. The parts of me that have emotional blow-ups, or who have rage on my children. And the parts of me that, feel too sad. And I'm like, no, I got to hide that. I can't show everyone that I'm feeling sad. I don't like those parts of me. But why don't we like those parts of ourselves? Because they were not given love and acceptance as much growing up. Unless we were really hurt and in pain or something, then yes, we may have gotten it. But not always for even the little things, Maybe we were called a crybaby, or we're told, oh, don't cry, you don't need to cry, And what's the messaging there? Okay, I'm having an authentic expression of sadness right now as a child, and my parent is telling me, don't cry. So I'm wrong to cry? I can't trust my authentic self? Oh my gosh, now I really got to not like this part of me. So do you see how it doesn't help our kids to trust themselves? So this is full circle coming, it all comes back to you. So that's why going above and beyond and doing everything for our children at the detriment of ourselves is not healthy for us or them. From a brain development perspective, you know, from a nervous system development perspective, if as a parent who stays regulated and has full attunement to their emotional environment, helps the child to learn from that. It helps the child to have, because then you're not going to react, you're going to respond to your child. And it helps your child to develop a more integrated brain, not a fragmented brain. So what happens like with trauma, and trauma can be anything. Trauma is not like something major that happens to you. It's all about perception. It's about perceiving something as, you know, threatening and isolating, where there's no strategy and no one to help you with that, you know, those emotions in the moment. Okay. So in trauma, like when kids have traumatic moments, right? And they don't get that response of attunement and understanding and care. And instead they get an angry parent who's like angry at them for having that response. It's from a brain development, nervous system development perspective, it's very, very fragmenting. So because we're biologically wired to feel safe and loved and accepted by our parents. And so we are biologically wired to see our parents as safety. But in this moment, our parents are not safety. They're telling us that they're not there for us in our most vulnerable moment, you know, and then the brain kind of fragments and disassociates, you know, and it doesn't help with creating like a brain that's integrated. And a brain that's integrated helps you have a more resilient life, you know, helps you weather the storms better in life. So it is number one, I think, for parents to take care of their own emotional health. And then to also mirror that to their children. You know, if you have moments, you're going to have moments, like you're human, you're going to have moments of lashing out on your children and not making great choices. But what matters more than slipping up like that is repairing, you know, and showing them that I saw it. Was that scary for you? That must have been scary for you. I'm sorry. I'm going to try better next time. Mommy was overwhelmed, you know, and next time, how about you can, I take a deep breath and, you know, or I tell you, mommy's feeling overwhelmed. I need a bit of time. So mirroring that kind of stuff to your children versus what happens in the moment is when you're very angry and then emotionally you disconnect from them. Very scary for a child, very scary. And that creates a lot of anxiety in a child. So, so really important as parents to tune in to your own emotional experiences and to take care of yourself first emotionally, like not just getting your hair done, getting your nails done and taking all that time to do that kind of stuff. That's necessary stuff. And then in certain, you know, in the first world stuff, you know, like that's like kind of, but I'm talking about the real care, you know, the emotional care you never got as a child. It's time for parents to start giving themselves that self-compassion and the emotional care that they never got as a child. You know, that only then, when you can do that for yourself, can you do that for your children, and can you do that for your spouse, and can you do that for other people in your life? So it really is about you first.
Yeah. Again, very hard. I mean, maybe
very hard.
Yeah, but it's very hard to not. It's not that you're putting yourself first. It's just taking care of yourself, kind of like you said, in an emotional level, and letting things go in terms of that was, you know, a mess up, and we all mess up, and it's okay to mess up, and being okay with it, because
right. But sometimes it is putting yourself first. If you're a parent who's exhausted, you know, like I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and there are times I was really wiped, and and now like fatigue is my message of saying that I'm doing too much, you know, and it's kind of like my body tells me, right? So there are days like it's a Saturday and if my son wants to go off and do something that he wants to do and I'm too tired, I will explain it to him that, look, mommy had a really, tough, hard week. Can we come up with a solution that works? Like I need like these 2 hours to just lie down and do nothing and rest. And then can we you know, go off and do something after that. And he may sulk and be upset, but I'm like, I'm doing self-care, you know, just like I want you to do self-care. And I'm modeling it to him. Like, if you're tired and you want to lie around, I'm not going to get mad at you, you know, because I know that you're listening to your body. So I'm listening to my body's saying, I really need like 2 hours of just rest. So what can we do in this time that's very restful instead? And then we can go do what you need to do. So it is putting yourself first, and it's okay to do that. It's okay to tell your kids you're too tired, that in a way that's not angry at them, but in a way that, you know, that's showing that you're practicing self-care, because then they're going to learn that, and they're going to do that for themselves. They're going to learn to tune into their body and listen to themselves. And as you tune more into your body and listen to yourself, then you come more from your authenticity, which is very life-giving. And when you come from your authenticity, you don't feel stressed so much. When you come from feeling like I have to be this way, I have to be this way, I have to be this way, that creates a lot of stress in the body.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Just going like this when you're doing it, I can see
Right.
that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about discipline, because it's not that I agree with hardcore discipline, but I do think there are things that we must teach our children, you know, brushing your teeth and all of that kind of stuff, and not hitting your sister or whatever those
Yes.
fun things are. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is something I have to admit has never been one of my strengths that I really had to work on. And I call it kind of like boundaries and healthy rules, you know, of ways of doing things. And what's okay and what's not okay. And so moments of discipline are really, I look at as teaching moments for your children, and to understand first why they are behaving this way. Usually when a child, so give me an example of something that you feel like a child should be disciplined on, like hitting his sister?
Just hitting his sister.
Yeah, okay. So you kind of look at, okay, what's the need here? Why is he hitting his sister? Because he has a need, and he can't express it in the healthier way, right? Using his words. And
they express it healthy. They yell.
Right. They yell and scream though, right? But they feel like they're not getting their needs met, so then they resort to hitting. And that's another way kids can express their boundaries, right? So he's trying to express a need and a boundary for himself, because anger is just an expression of a boundary. Okay. So anger is an expression of a boundary. So those are teaching moments. Instead of saying to the child, you know, if stop hitting your sister, I'm going to take your iPad away. Is that like a direct consequence? You know, this is like, if you've ever read Dr. Shefali Sabari's work on conscious parenting, she wrote a book on the out of control child or something like that. And I learned a lot about consequences on that, having to be natural consequences, you know.
I've read that book.
Yeah. So that's, but I take like disciplining as sort of like, it is necessary, teaching moments of what, you know, the child needs to learn in that moment. And they may not learn the first time, they may not learn the second time or the third time, but we don't always have to threaten. I feel like we don't always have to threaten for the child to learn. We can just have the child in the moment, you know, express, okay, what's your need? Okay, what's your need? What were you upset about? Okay, what did you think that, did you like hitting your sister? Does that feel good to you? Like, that's what I would put it back on him, right? Like, does that feel good to you, that when you hurt somebody else in that way? And he'll probably be like, no. I'm like, okay, so we made not a great choice, you know, but doesn't mean you're a bad kid, doesn't mean you're a bad person. You just didn't make a great choice. So how about next time, what's a better choice we can make? Okay, how can we try to work it out together in a better way? So it's all teaching moments, which can seem exhausting to parents, but it can, if you do that, you know, versus reacting, then your children will learn much faster. You'll be surprised how, when it comes from a heartfelt way, where you come from a full understanding of why he did what he did, with compassion. Oh, you really felt the need to hit her. You were so angry. Okay, I understand. You felt like you had no other choice but to hit her. But did that make you feel good? No. Okay, so then what would make you feel better next time? Okay, maybe come to mommy then. Or maybe you guys work it out in a way, you know, that, you know, both of you can be happy. And then you help them problem solve in the moment. And then you remind them next time, oh, I see you're getting frustrated again. I know you didn't like hitting your sister last time. Maybe you guys want to come up with that, use that solution again and see, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's cueing them, right? Not to go back into the behavior and changing the trigger, you know?
Yeah, really.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. That was a good one. I like that.
Okay. Now, but with parents, keep in mind, like with parents who have a lot of struggle with confrontation and really working through challenges, like if you had a family dynamic where it was really hard to work through challenges and there was a lot of, you know, just getting mad, and then you're probably going to have a lot of discomfort with your kids being in that situation versus you being like, okay, they're just kids being kids. It's my opportunity. This is an opportunity for a teaching moment. And how can I fully be there to understand both their needs and then help them work it out and problem solve?
Yeah. Okay. I can totally relate to all of that. Wonderful. So my last question to you is going to be kind of, and maybe we already talked about this in terms of activities that we as parents can do to help us stay in, and it's not in the moment, because I know that that's a very buzzword, but to where we can kind of stay in tune to ourselves and tune to what it is exactly that we're kind of, like you said, your need in that moment and why
Yeah.
you're getting emotional due to the need that you're feeling. So that's kind of my question.
Yeah. So with parents, you know, really, again, the same way you're going to attune to your own, is for parents first to each do their own inner work, you know, separately, because that alone, like we try to do so many things together to connect, and that's wonderful too. Like it's wonderful to do the little things like going for walks or giving each other a heartfelt hug every day to like feel that connection between you amongst all the chaos going on in your life, you know. It just, those moments are very, very important. But in order to truly support, you know, your and feel connected to your spouse, you need to fully feel connected with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts with having a lot of self-compassion for yourself and your whatever you're struggling with, and just simply putting your hand on your heart and saying, this is a moment of suffering. This is hard for me. Like I'm having a hard time. And then just feeling love and acceptance to that part of you can help bring, you know, the emotional level down a lot in moments of frustration with your children and your husband. And then help bring you back into connection versus into trying to disconnect. And so the only way you can also truly feel, you know, understand what your spouse is going through is if you can understand what you're going through first. Then only can you have compassion for your spouse. Like I find as parents, we're often in competition for who has it worse. Yes.
Yes.
Who's got it busier? Who's got more things on their plate? And, you know, mothers, we take on a lot, right? A lot of us have more of the household responsibilities on top of work, and then more of thinking about all the details of the kids and their programs and all of that. It's like, you know, this whole cultural conditioning that comes down. But and mothers and fathers worry about things in different ways, you know. But keeping connected as a couple is really, really important for your children and their health as well, and showing them that you're a team. You know, but you can't be a team unless you really understand each other, and you can't really understand each other unless you really understand yourself first. If you can be there for yourself first, then you can be there for, you know, your husband as a team. And if you didn't learn that from your own upbringing, your own parents' relationship, then you're likely not going to be able to do it in your own relationship. Or, you know, some people go the opposite. They do it and they overdo it, you know, in that they give too much of themselves to try and maintain the connection. But it's not coming necessarily from a very like grounded, peaceful place, coming more from a fear, worry place.
Right.
But so connection as parents is, yes, take time to be together, talk about your like deepest, darkest worries and connect on that level, you know, versus like, well, one parent's talking about the worries of the child, and the other parent's kind of tuning out, and it's like, okay, are on their phone on or doing work. Just happened many times in my house.
Yeah, me too.
Worked on that. Yeah, we worked on that too. So coming into the present moment and fully being able to connect and having compassion for the other person for what they're going through is helps you kind of maintain that connection. But again, it always comes back to doing your own inner work first,
Yeah.
because then that helps to deepen the connection that you have with your spouse.
Well, thank you very much. That was really eye-opening, and I completely need to give myself more compassion. That's going to
Yes.
be
Yeah.
my new work.
Yeah, honestly, it is like there's studies on this, right? There's science behind how self-compassion really helps to build resiliency in life, helps you weather the storms better, decreases the stress response in the body. And so many of us have not learned to be compassionate with ourselves, to not accept the parts of us that were not perfect and we're not doing everything right. And so we shun those parts of us, but we need to love and accept all parts of us. And as we do that, then we can love and accept all parts of our children and really help them live into their authentic self. And imagine like raising a generation of kids who are so authentic and confident and own who they are and don't have to be part of the norm or what everybody else in society is doing, and can feel confident enough, that they are themselves because you gave that to them. You mirrored that to them. I think that is the greatest gift you can ever give your children.
It really would. Honesty and authenticity are very missing in our society, in my opinion. We're
Yes.
very worried about if we're going to be nice or if we're going to, hurt someone's feelings, even if it's just to take care of ourselves. I think that people just feel guilty, and it's not real.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, completely. So starting with self-compassion and then really shifting the beliefs, really looking hard at the beliefs you're operating through, because that's like your lens, right? Those rose-colored glasses or those dark colored glasses, whatever you want to see, call it, that you see life through, that you see your children to, step into that awareness. And when you do, and you shine a light on them, they no longer have the stronghold over you, and you can have a choice from that point to be different. And it's not just for your kids, it's fully for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome.
Coming on today and being a part of this, because I think you've probably opened a lot of parents' eyes and really show them how to be, in terms of like finding that calm spot and giving yourself and your children just the same amount of compassion is the word I feel like comes from you. So thank you. I really appreciate you being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.